The click of Madison Hayes's heels echoed through the 18th floor hallways of the Legacy Hotel as she pushed her cleaning cart, trying to ignore the twinges in her back that intensified with each movement. Her shaking hands adjusted the identification badge attached to the navy blue uniform that barely managed to disguise her 7-month pregnancy. Standing in front of the door to the presidential penthouse, Madison took a deep breath, facing the irony of fate. 3 years ago, she frequented 5-star hotels as a guest, not as a maid. 3 years since she had abandoned everything, and most of all, she had abandoned him. His reflections were interrupted by the sound of the private elevator opening. Madison felt her blood freeze in her veins as she recognized the familiar silhouette emerging from the chrome doors. Archer. Tall, imposing, wearing an impeccable Italian suit that further accentuated his domineering presence. He stopped abruptly when he saw her, his green eyes darkening with a mixture of shock and fury. "Madison?" His voice sounded rough, as if the words were being ripped from his throat. Time seemed to freeze in that luxurious corridor of the Legacy Hotel in Boston. Madison instinctively took a step back, her right hand resting protectively on her prominent belly. The gesture did not go unnoticed by Archer, whose gaze flickered between her face and her obvious pregnancy. "Is this some kind of joke?" Archer stepped forward, his expression hardening. "After 3 years, you just show up like this? Pregnant and cleaning rooms?" Madison fought to maintain her composure, even as her legs felt weak. "I didn't know you'd be here. The hotel is owned by the Reynolds Corporation, not—" "It belonged," Archer interrupted, a humorless smile curving his lips. "The acquisition was finalized this morning. The Legacy Hotel, along with the entire Reynolds chain, is now owned by Blackwood Enterprises." The revelation hit Madison like a punch in the gut. She had chosen to work at the Legacy Hotel precisely because she believed she would be safe from any connection with Archer. Now their last refuge had turned into enemy territory. "We need to talk," Archer declared, swiping the card into the electronic lock. It wasn't a request. It was an order. Inside the presidential suite, Madison remained near the door while Archer poured himself a drink from the private bar. The silence between them was filled with unasked questions and unspoken accusations. "How long?" Archer finally asked, his eyes fixed on the amber liquid in his glass. 7 months, Madison replied, her voice just a whisper. Archer let out a bitter laugh. "Interesting timing. Exactly when Blackwood Enterprises shares hit their record high on the stock exchange." "It's not what you think," Madison protested, feeling tears form in her eyes. "And what exactly am I supposed to think, Madison?" Archer placed the glass on the bar with excessive force. "You disappear when we were practically broke, leaving only divorce papers. Now you reappear, pregnant, just when I've become one of the most successful businessmen on the East Coast." "Appearances can be deceiving, Archer," Madison replied, fighting the dizziness she was beginning to feel. "There are things you don't know." "Then tell me," he demanded, moving closer. "Tell me why you ran away that night. Tell me whose baby this is." Madison felt the weight of her secrets pressing down on her chest. How could he explain that his escape had been to protect him? How could he reveal that the threats he had received at that time came from someone close to him? Someone who now held a position of power in his empire. Madison began, but was interrupted by a sudden contraction that made her double over in pain. Archer reacted instinctively, catching her before she fell. The physical contact between them, after so long, awoke sensations that they both tried desperately to ignore. "You need to sit down," he murmured, guiding her to the Italian leather sofa. His anger momentarily replaced by worry. "I'm fine," Madison insisted, even as Archer knelt in front of her, his large, warm hands still holding her arms. "Clearly not," he replied, his tone softer. "How long have you been working like this? Carrying cleaning supplies, bending over, pushing yourself beyond your limit?" "I do what I need to survive," Madison replied, lifting her chin in defiance. Archer studied her for a long moment, as if trying to decipher a particularly complex puzzle. "I have a proposition for you," he finally declared. Move to the hotel. Room and meals on me. Full medical care for you and the baby. In exchange for what? Madison asked, knowing the man in front of her too well to believe in disinterested charity. In exchange for the truth, Archer replied, his intense green eyes fixed on hers. All of her. Why did you leave? Where have you been these years? And most of all, he paused meaningfully, if this baby is mine. Madison felt the weight of the world on her shoulders. The truth Archer demanded could destroy not only the empire he built, but also put both their lives at risk. However, looking at the man who had once been her entire world, she knew she couldn't keep running forever. Okay, she agreed, her voice shaking slightly. But you have to promise me one thing. No matter what I reveal, you will listen to the end. No interruptions, no hasty judgments. Archer nodded solemnly, unaware that he was about to discover that his greatest threats came not from external competitors, but from the circle of people he trusted most. Madison looked out over the city of Boston through the large window of the executive suite where she was now staying, an ironic change from her rented room in the suburbs. The evening lights danced over the waters of the harbor, reminding her of the first time Archer brought her to see the city 5 years ago. Your belongings have already been brought from your previous address. Archer's voice surprised her. He was standing in the doorway, still in his business suit, although his tie was already loose around his neck. The doctor will be here in an hour for a full checkup. You don't waste time, Madison commented, turning to face him. The determination in his green eyes was familiar. It was the same that had transformed him from a businessman struggling to keep the family company going into a business tycoon. 3 years was enough wasted time, he replied, crossing the room to pour himself some water. Now I think you owe me some explaining. Madison sat in the armchair next to the window, her hands instinctively protecting her stomach. Where do you want me to start? How about the night you decided to destroy our lives? The bitterness in his voice was palpable. I came home after spending the whole day trying to get a loan to save the company and found only divorce papers. Do you think it was easy for me? Madison felt tears burning her eyes. I had just discovered that. A knock on the door interrupted her. It was Rachel Chen, Archer's personal assistant, an Asian woman with a permanently serious expression. Mr. Blackwood, the council is waiting for the video conference, Rachel announced, giving Madison a calculated look. Reschedule for tomorrow, Archer ordered, not taking his eyes off Madison. Sir, it's about the merger with Reynolds. Mr. Harrison insists it needs to be today. Madison noticed the tension in Archer's shoulders. Harrison. The name made his stomach turn. Paul Harrison, the man who had been Archer's mentor and was now his right-hand man at Blackwood Enterprises. The same man who 3 years ago had destroyed her marriage with threats and revelations that she still struggled to process. Go, Madison said softly. Some truths have waited 3 years. They can wait a few more hours. Archer hesitated, studying her face as if searching for signs that she might disappear again. The doctor will arrive at 7. We'll have dinner after, and then we'll talk. No more interruptions. After leaving, Madison allowed herself to sink into her seat, exhausted. Memories of that last night assaulted her. The brown envelope left on her door, the compromising photos, Harrison's threatening voice on the phone. If you really love Archer, you'll leave. Or else, I'll make sure he finds out about his father's involvement in the Reynolds deaths. The sound of another knock on the door brought her back to the present. It was Dr. Nathan Cooper, a middle-aged obstetrician with gentle eyes behind gold-rimmed glasses. Mrs. Hayes, I'm Dr. Cooper. Mr. Blackwood asked me to monitor your pregnancy. During the exam, Madison discovered that the doctor was more than competent. He was insightful. Your stress level is very high, he observed, putting away his instruments. It's not good for the baby. It needs rest and tranquility. Madison laughed humorlessly. Tranquility isn't part of my vocabulary lately, doctor. Well, maybe this will help. He handed over a folder with the test results. Do you want to know the sex of the baby? Madison's heart quickened. In his previous consultations at public clinics, he had never been able to find out. Yes, please. It's a girl, and she's perfectly healthy. A girl. Madison felt the tears flow freely. A small life that carried the legacy of so much love and so much pain. After the doctor left, Madison took a long shower, trying to organize her thoughts. How would he explain to Archer that his escape had been to protect him? How would he reveal that Harrison, the man he trusted most, had not only orchestrated their separation, but was also behind a scheme that had cost lives? Dinner arrived promptly at 8, served in the suite's small dining room. Archer was already there, now without his jacket, his shirt sleeves rolled up revealing his tanned forearms. The doctor left a full report, he commented as Madison sat down. The pregnancy is progressing well, but you need rest. Archer, Madison started, but he held up his hand. First, let's have dinner. You need to eat properly. His tone was authoritative, but there was a note of concern that she knew well. During the meal, they talked about superficial matters, the weather in Boston, the changes in the city in recent years. It was easier this way, pretending there wasn't an abyss of secrets between them. But when the plates were removed and they were left alone with their water glasses, the moment of truth had arrived. Now, Archer said, leaning forward, tell me why you really left that night. Madison took a deep breath, feeling the weight of the brown envelope she had kept in her purse for 3 years. It was time for truth, no matter the consequences. Because I discovered something about your father, Archer. Something that would change everything you believe about him and Blackwood Enterprises. The silence that followed Madison's statement weighed like lead on the atmosphere of the suite. Archer remained motionless, his fingers gripping the water cup so hard his knuckles turned white. My father? Her voice was controlled, but Madison recognized the underlying tension. What exactly did you find out about Richard Blackwood? Madison opened her purse with shaking hands, pulling out the brown envelope she had carried with her for 3 years. The paper was frayed at the folds, marked by time and the weight of the secrets it contained. That night before I left, I received this, she began, sliding the envelope across the table. These are documents that prove your father was involved in a money laundering scheme with the Reynolds family. The accident that killed James and Catherine Reynolds was not an accident. Archer opened the envelope sharply, his green eyes quickly scanning the pages. Madison watched as his expression changed from initial skepticism to something darker as he took in the information. That's impossible, he murmured, but his voice betrayed the doubt that was beginning to form. My father and James Reynolds were friends for decades. Why would he? Money, Madison finished softly. The Reynolds discovered the scheme and threatened to expose everything. That's when Paul Harrison arrived on the scene. The mention of Harrison's name made Archer look up from his documents. Harrison? What does he have to do with this? He was the executor of the plan. Madison felt her throat tighten at the revelation. The night I received these documents, Harrison paid me a visit. He said that if I didn't leave you, he would not only expose your father's involvement, but he would make sure you were implicated as well. Archer stood up abruptly, starting to pace the room. Why didn't you tell me? Why did you just run away? Because he had fabricated evidence against you, Madison exclaimed, feeling the baby shift restlessly in response to her fussing. Documents, wire transfers, everything meticulously forged to make it look like you were aware of the scheme. Harrison made it clear that if I didn't disappear, this evidence would be turned over to the authorities. And you believed him? Archer's voice was thick with hurt. I was pregnant, Archer, Madison revealed, making him stop in his tracks. I just found out, and the idea of you being arrested. I couldn't risk it. Pregnant. Archer turned to her, confusion on his face. But you lost the baby in the car accident a few weeks later. Madison closed her eyes, feeling the tears escape. There was no accident. Harrison forged everything, including my medical records, so you wouldn't look for me. I went to Portland, Oregon, where my aunt lived. I lost the baby naturally in the 3rd month. Archer slowly approached, kneeling before her. His eyes, once hard with anger, now reflected a mixture of pain and understanding. "What now?" "This baby." "It's yours," Madison confirmed, guiding his hand to her belly where her daughter was moving. "I found out I was pregnant again 2 weeks before I got back to Boston. I didn't plan on letting you know, but then you bought Legacy. Why go back now? Why take the risk?" "Because Harrison is planning something bigger," Madison explained, handing him another set of documents. "Over the last few months, while working at the hotel, I discovered he's been repeating the same scheme with the Reynolds chain. The acquisition you just finalized, it's part of his plan." Archer studied the new documents, his expression hardening. "He has been using my company, my name, to continue my father's operations, and it's setting you up to be the scapegoat when it all comes to a head," Madison added. "That's why I came back. I couldn't let that happen." A soft knock on the door interrupted the conversation. Rachel Chen entered, her normally impassive face showing urgency. "Mr. Blackwood, sorry for the interruption, but Mr. Harrison is in the lobby. He says he needs to discuss urgent details about the merger." Madison felt her blood run cold in her veins. The look Archer gave him confirmed that they had come to the same thought. Harrison must have found out about their reunion. "Tell him I'll be in the office in 15 minutes, Archer instructed, his voice betraying no emotion. When Rachel left, Archer turned to Madison. "You will stay here, under protection. I will deal with Harrison." "Archer, he's dangerous," Madison protested, grabbing his arm. "He has not hesitated to destroy lives before." "But now it's different," Archer replied, his expression determined. "Now I know the truth, and more importantly," he placed his hand on her belly, "I now have more to lose than just money or reputation." Madison watched as he prepared to leave, adjusting his tie and wearing his suit jacket like armor. At the door, he stopped and turned around. "Madison, thank you for coming back, for trusting me now." As the door closed behind him, Madison felt the weight of years of secrets begin to lift. But as she stroked her belly, she couldn't help the fear that consumed her. Harrison was not a man to give up easily, and she knew the real battle was just beginning. Archer watched the city through the window of his rooftop office at the Legacy Hotel, his mind processing Madison's revelations as he awaited Harrison's arrival. The documents she had provided were spread out on his desk, each page revealing a new layer of the scheme that had destroyed not only his marriage, but also his faith in his own father. The sound of the private elevator announced the arrival of Paul Harrison. Tall, elegant, and with perfectly trimmed gray hair, Harrison exuded the same confidence that had made him Archer's mentor after Richard Blackwood's death. "Archer, we need to discuss some irregularities I discovered in Reynolds' documentation," Harrison began, but stopped when he noticed the papers on the table. His smile faltered for a split second. "I see you're reviewing the contracts." "Actually, Paul, I'm reviewing something much more interesting," Archer replied, his voice dangerously calm. "Documents on the real reason for the Reynolds accident. Curious how some truths take years to come to light, isn't it?" Harrison maintained his composure, but Archer noticed the slight tremor in his hands as he adjusted his tie. "I don't know what you're talking about." "No." Archer slid a photo across the table. In it, Harrison appeared alongside Richard Blackwood in a discreet restaurant, the day before the accident that killed the Reynolds couple. "How about we start with this meeting that never officially existed?" "That was just lunch between friends," Harrison tried to dismiss, but Archer was already pushing another document in his direction. "And these bank transfers? 15 million siphoned through offshore accounts, all connected to you and my father. The same amount that James Reynolds had discovered missing from the company's funds." Harrison studied Archer for a long moment before letting his disguise fall. His cordial smile was replaced by something more calculating, colder. "She told you everything, didn't she? Your lovely ex-wife finally decided to share her secrets." "Madison should have told me 3 years ago," Archer admitted. "But I understand why you didn't. You threatened her, used our unborn child as leverage." "It was necessary. Harrison declared unapologetically. You were too young, too idealistic. You wouldn't understand that sometimes sacrifices have to be made for business. Sacrifices? Archer felt his anger rise. You call ordering the death of two people a sacrifice? Destroying my marriage? Threatening a pregnant woman? Your father understood the need for steady hands in business, Harrison retorted. Why do you think he chose me as his mentor? To keep him on the right path, to ensure the Blackwood legacy continued. The Blackwood legacy? Archer laughed humorlessly. You turned our company into a money laundering machine. And now you're trying to do the same to Reynolds. Harrison leaned forward, abandoning all pretense of innocence. Do you really think you can stop me? I have enough evidence to destroy not just you, but the entire empire you built. It was, Archer corrected, pressing a button on his phone. The office door opened, revealing two FBI agents. Do you know Agent Miller and Agent Rodriguez? They were very interested in the documents that Madison preserved all these years. Harrison's face paled visibly. You wouldn't do that. You'd destroy your own company. Blackwood Enterprises will survive, Archer declared with conviction, but it will be built on honest foundations, not crimes and threats. As the officers approached, Harrison made a sudden movement toward his briefcase. Archer reacted instantly, but wasn't quick enough to stop Harrison from pulling out a gun. No one moves, Harrison screamed, his face contorted in despair. I'm not going to lose everything because of a pregnant bitch and an ungrateful boy. The icy panic that shot through Archer was not for himself, but for Madison, 2 floors above. Harrison noticed the change in her expression. Ah, yes, he smiled mischievously. While we are here, my men must already be paying your dear Madison a visit. After all, she has always been the weak point of the Blackwood family. Archer didn't hesitate. In a move that surprised everyone, he charged at Harrison. The shot echoed through the office, but Archer had already diverted the gun's aim, which fired at the ceiling. FBI agents quickly overpowered Harrison, disarming him and handcuffing him. Ignoring the pain in his shoulder where the bullet had grazed him, Archer ran to the elevator. His heart hammered in his chest as the floor numbers slowly passed by. When the doors opened on Madison's suite floor, he found 2 security guards lying in the hallway and the bedroom door ajar. Madison, he called, entering the suite with his heart in his throat. Here! Her voice came from the bathroom. When Archer opened the door, he found Madison holding a broken toilet as a weapon and an unconscious man at her feet. I think they underestimated a pregnant woman with a lot of anger. The relief Archer felt was so intense that he had to lean against the wall. Madison dropped the vase and ran to him, noticing the blood on his shirt. You're hurt, she exclaimed, examining her shoulder. It's superficial, he assured, pulling her into a tight hug. Harrison is in custody. It's over. Madison trembled in his arms, finally allowing herself to feel the fear she had suppressed. Our daughter chose an interesting time to start kicking like a soccer player. Archer placed his hand on her belly, feeling his daughter's movements. An innocent life that, unknowingly, had helped expose a web of lies and betrayal, but also a life that represented hope, redemption, and the chance for a new beginning. We're going to have a lot to explain to her when she grows up, he murmured against Madison's hair. At least we'll have quite a story to tell, she replied, a small smile appearing on her lips. A week after Harrison's arrest, Madison was adjusting to her new reality at the Legacy Hotel. Sitting in one of the armchairs on the balcony of her suite, she watched the lawyers and auditors who entered and left the building, all part of the task force assembled to investigate the extent of Harrison's crimes at Blackwood Enterprises. You should be resting, Archer's voice surprised her. He was standing at the porch door, his right arm still in a sling from the gunshot wound. Hard to rest when there's so much going on, Madison replied, indicating the movement downstairs. How was the meeting with the council? Archer sat in the armchair next to her, his tired expression revealing the weight of the last few days. Better than expected. Most members are cooperating with the investigation. Apparently, Harrison kept most of his illicit operations well hidden, even from the directors themselves. What about your father? Madison asked softly, knowing how sensitive the topic still was. Investigators found a diary of his, Archer revealed, his voice cracking. It seems that in the months before his death he was planning to expose Harrison. Maybe that's why. That's why the car accident that killed him wasn't really an accident, Madison added, reaching out to hold his hand. The silence that followed was interrupted by the arrival of Rachel Chen, who seemed more agitated than usual. Mr. Blackwood, sorry to interrupt, but Claire Reynolds is here. She insists on speaking to you. Madison felt Archer tense beside her. Claire Reynolds, the only surviving daughter of James and Catherine Reynolds, had been in Europe when her parents died. His unexpected return could not be a coincidence. Send her up, Archer instructed, exchanging a meaningful look with Madison. Minutes later, Claire Reynolds entered the suite. Tall and elegant like her mother, she carried with her a briefcase that Madison recognized immediately. It was identical to the one Harrison had used to blackmail her 3 years earlier. Sorry to show up unannounced, Claire began, her gaze switching between Archer and Madison. But when I heard about Harrison's arrest, I knew it was finally safe to go back. You knew, Archer deduced, indicating the folder. About Harrison, about my father. I found out shortly after my parents died, Claire confirmed, sitting down on the couch. Harrison found me in Paris, offered the same deal he made with Madison, my silence in exchange for my life. Madison felt her daughter shift restlessly, as if responding to the tension in the room. Why go back now? Because I have the last pieces of the puzzle. Claire opened the folder, revealing documents and photos. Harrison did not act alone. There was an entire network of executives at different companies all participating in the money laundering scheme. Archer looked over the documents, his expression darkening. Some of those names are Blackwood board members. And the Reynolds Corporation, Claire added. That's why the merger was so important to them. They needed to maintain control of both companies to continue their operations. Madison watched as Archer absorbed the information, recognizing the signs of his strategic mind at work. Do you have enough evidence to take down the entire network? Yes, Claire confirmed. But I need your help, Archer. These people are powerful. They have connections everywhere. Alone, I can't. You're not alone, Madison interrupted, surprising everyone. We've already lost so much to these people. It's time we take back what's ours. Archer nodded, renewed determination in his eyes. Claire, I'm going to set up a meeting with the FBI tomorrow. In the meantime, you stay here at the hotel, under protection. After Claire was settled into a suite on the floor below, Madison found Archer in his office, organizing the new documents. Are you well? She asked, noticing the tension in his shoulders. I'm thinking about all the wasted years, he replied, turning to her. In lives destroyed by greed. My father trying to do the right thing in the end. You running away to protect me. Claire exiled. Madison walked over, placing her hand on his chest. We cannot change the past, but we can guarantee a better future. For our daughter, for the legacy we want to leave. Archer covered her hand with his. Have you thought of a name for her? Grace, Madison replied softly. Because despite everything, it was the grace of destiny that brought us together again. The moment was interrupted by Archer's phone. It was FBI agent Miller with urgent news. 2 board members had tried to leave the country but were detained at the airport. They're panicking, Archer commented after hanging up. They know the scheme is falling apart. Which means they could become even more dangerous, Madison observed, patting her belly protectively. That's why you and Claire are going to our house on Martha's Vineyard tomorrow, Archer declared. It's safer than the hotel, and I can be sure you two are protected while we deal with the council. Madison wanted to protest, but she knew he was right. With Grace arriving in less than 2 months, he couldn't take any chances. Furthermore, he had a feeling that the next few days would be crucial for the future of Blackwood Enterprises, and for all of them. Promise you'll be careful, she asked, remembering the shot that had almost killed him. Always, he replied, kissing her forehead. I have so much more to live for now. As night fell over Boston, Madison reflected on how life could change so drastically in just a few days. From pregnant and lonely chambermaid to centerpiece in a plot involving some of the biggest corporations in the country. But looking at Archer, seeing the strength and determination in his eyes, I knew that this time they would face everything together. The rising sun cast long shadows over the Martha's Vineyard estate when Madison woke up to the sound of waves crashing on the beach. The Blackwoods' 3-story home, with its Victorian architecture and wraparound porches, offered a commanding view of the Atlantic Ocean. It was a haven that under other circumstances would have been perfect for relaxing during her pregnancy. But relaxation was impossible, especially after the call Archer had made the night before. 3 Blackwood Enterprises executives had been found dead in their offices, an apparent mass suicide. Madison knew better. They were the same executives that Claire had identified as a central part of the money laundering scheme. "You need to eat something," Claire insisted, entering the room with a breakfast tray. Over the past 48 hours, an unlikely friendship had developed between the two women, united by their shared experiences as victims of the same conspiracy. "Archer said he's coming today?" Madison asked, accepting a cup of tea. "Yes, as soon as the meeting with the federal prosecutor is over," Claire replied, sitting on the edge of the bed. Investigators found something interesting on the executives' computers before their deaths. Madison felt Grace shift restlessly, as if responding to her mother's tension. "What?" "Bank transfers to a company in the Cayman Islands," Claire explained, showing her tablet. "A company that, interestingly enough, has connections to the vice president of the Reynolds Corporation." "Marcus Sterling?" Madison frowned. "But he always seemed so clean," Claire added with a bitter smile. "Just as Harrison seemed like the perfect mentor for Archer." The sound of a helicopter interrupted the conversation. Through the window they saw the Blackwood Enterprises aircraft landing on the property's helipad. Minutes later, Archer entered the room, looking more exhausted than Madison had ever seen him. "Sterling confessed," he announced without preamble. "He organized the executives' deaths to keep them from talking." "My God," Claire muttered, plopping down into a nearby armchair. "But there's more," Archer continued, sitting down next to Madison on the bed. "Sterling kept a detailed file of all illegal operations over the past 10 years, including—" He hesitated, looking at Claire. "Documents on the real reason your parents were killed." Claire visibly paled. "What do you mean?" "Your parents didn't just discover the money laundering scheme," Archer explained gently. "They found evidence that the Reynolds Corporation was being used for human trafficking through the hotels." The silence that followed was deafening. Madison instinctively placed her hand on her stomach, thinking of all the lives destroyed by those men's greed. "How?" Claire struggled to form words. "How did they manage to hide it for so long?" "Using the hotels as a front," Archer replied, his voice thick with disgust. "The same suites that hosted executives during the day were used for other activities during the night." Madison felt her stomach drop. "The legacy?" "It was one of the main points," Archer confirmed. "That's why Harrison was so desperate when I announced the acquisition. He knew a full audit would reveal everything." A sudden alarm began to sound throughout the house, making the 3 of them jump. Through the windows, they saw security guards running around the perimeter of the property. "Perimeter breached, eastern sector," the security chief's voice echoed over the communication system. "Stop panic," Archer ordered, helping Madison to her feet. Claire was already collecting her electronic devices. Panic was a safe room in the basement, designed specifically for situations like this. As they walked down the stairs, Madison couldn't help but notice how her life had turned into a spy thriller. "The documents?" she asked Claire as Archer entered the security code. "Everything is saved on secure servers," Claire assured. "Even if they catch us, the truth will come out." Inside the safe room, monitors showed images from security cameras. Through them, they saw 3 armed men approaching the house. "Sterling isn't alone in this," Archer muttered, his body tense as he watched the monitors. "There are powerful people who don't want this story to come out." "How did they find us?" Madison asked, sitting down in one of the chairs as another contraction hit her. "There must be an insider," Claire suggested, typing quickly on her laptop. "Someone with access to Blackwood's information." Rachel, Archer realized suddenly. She was always loyal to Harrison. She had access to my every move. The sound of gunshots echoed through the audio system, followed by screams and the sound of breaking glass. Madison squeezed Archer's hand, feeling another stronger contraction. "Archer," she gasped. "I think Grace picked a bad time to decide to be born." The panic in his eyes was momentarily replaced by determination. "Claire, contact the FBI. Tell them Sterling is trying to eliminate witnesses." As Claire made the call, Archer knelt beside Madison, his hand gently stroking her belly. "Hang in there, love. Help is on the way." The sound of heavy footsteps above them made everyone freeze. The battle was far from over, and now it wasn't just the truth that was at stake. It was also the life of an innocent child who insisted on coming into the world amid chaos. The noise of footsteps and voices above the safe room grew louder as Madison fought another contraction. Sweat dripped down her face as she leaned on Archer, who alternated his gaze between the security monitors and his wife's contorted face. "They're systematically searching every room," Claire reported, her eyes fixed on the screens showing the invaders. "The FBI is on its way, but it will take at least 20 minutes. "Grace isn't going to wait 20 minutes, Madison gasped, squeezing Archer's hand with renewed strength. An explosion on the upper floor shook the ceiling of the safe room, sending dust crashing down on them. Archer quickly positioned his body over Madison, shielding her from the falling debris. "We need a plan B," he stated, checking the room's other exits. "There's an emergency tunnel that leads to the private port. If we can get there, I can have a boat ready in minutes." "Do you really think I can walk through a tunnel now?" Madison questioned, trying to maintain sarcasm even through the pain. "You won't need it," Archer replied, moving over to an emergency closet. From inside, he pulled out a folding wheelchair. "I thought of everything when I built this place." Claire, who was continuing to monitor the cameras, suddenly tensed up. "Archer, you need to see this." On the screens, a familiar face appeared. Marcus Sterling himself, overseeing the operation with a phone pressed to his ear. He wouldn't send goons to do his dirty work if he wasn't absolutely sure he'd find something here, Archer muttered, his mind working quickly. The original files, Madison realized, remembering an earlier conversation. The ones your father hid before he died. Sterling thinks they're here. And they are, Archer confirmed, moving over to a seemingly ordinary panel on the wall. With a precise movement, he pressed a sequence of points that revealed a secret compartment. "My father showed me this place when I was a child. He said that one day I would understand its importance." From inside the compartment, Archer removed an old folder and a flash drive. He barely had time to put them in his jacket before another explosion, this time closer, shook the room. "They're using heat detectors," Claire warned, watching the movements on the cameras. "They'll find us in a matter of minutes." Madison stifled a scream as another contraction hit her, stronger than the previous ones. "Archer, I can't move right now. Grace is coming." The dilemma in Archer's eyes was visible. The documents that could expose the whole truth were with him, but his wife was in labor in a room that would soon be invaded by armed men. "Claire," he called, his decision made. "Get the documents. Use the tunnel. When you get to the port, Harrison Jones will be waiting with his boat. He can be trusted." "I can't leave you here," Claire protested, but Archer was already handing over the folder and flash drive. "You're the only one who can ensure the truth comes out," he insisted. "About your parents, about all the trafficking victims. Madison and I will be more valuable as hostages than dead. Sterling will keep us alive to negotiate." The sound of more explosions, getting closer and closer, emphasized the urgency of the situation. Claire, with tears in her eyes, quickly hugged Madison before heading to the tunnel entrance. "I'll send help," she promised before disappearing into the dark passage. Archer immediately turned his attention to Madison, who was breathing heavily between increasingly frequent contractions. "Remember our first date?" he asked softly, trying to distract her from the pain and imminent danger. "You spilled hot coffee on my new shirt and then insisted on paying for the laundry." Madison managed to smile through her tears. "You said you would only accept if I had dinner with you in return." "It was the best deal I ever made," Archer replied, kissing her sweaty forehead. The moment was interrupted by the sound of metal being cut. They were cutting their way through the armored door. "Archer," Madison cupped his face in her hands, "promise that no matter what happens, you will protect our daughter." "With my life," he swore, his intense green eyes fixed on hers. The door to the safe room finally gave way in an explosion of sparks and twisted metal. Sterling entered first, followed by 4 armed men. "What a touching scene," he commented with a cold smile. The family gathered at the birth. "Where are the documents, Archer?" "You're too late, Sterling," Archer replied, keeping himself between the invaders and Madison. "The documents are already on their way to the FBI." Sterling's smile faltered for a moment before recovering. "It doesn't matter. I have other plans for you two." He gestured to his men. "Tie them up. Let's take them to a more appropriate location." Madison stifled another scream as a particularly strong contraction hit her. Sterling watched the scene with clinical disinterest. "Oh, yes, and call a doctor. We don't want anything to happen to the newest Blackwood heir, do we?" As he was forced away from Madison, Archer kept his eyes fixed on her, silently conveying strength and determination. They had survived 3 years of separation and secrets. They would survive this, too. The question was, how long would Claire have to hand over the evidence before Sterling decided his hostages were no longer needed? The inside of the armored van smelled of new leather and fear. Madison lay on a makeshift gurney, her contractions now only 2 minutes apart, as a tense-looking doctor monitored her vitals. Archer, strapped to a nearby seat, watched his captor's every move with the intensity of a predator waiting for the right moment to strike. "Dilation is almost complete," the doctor informed Sterling, who was in the front seat. "She needs a hospital. Dr. Peterson, you were paid handsomely to make sure this birth went without complications," Sterling replied without turning around. "Be creative." Madison stifled another scream as a particularly strong contraction hit her. Through the pain, she managed to catch snippets of a radio conversation. Something about federal agents in the harbor area and a suspect chasing a boat. "Claire did it," she whispered to Archer as the pain momentarily subsided. Archer nodded imperceptibly. His eyes were fixed on a detail the others had overlooked. Madison's bracelet, a gift he'd given her on their first wedding anniversary, contained a small tracking device, a precaution he had installed after his disappearance 3 years earlier. The van made a sharp turn, entering an abandoned industrial area on the outskirts of Boston. Through the armored windows, Madison glimpsed abandoned warehouses and deserted docks. The vehicle finally stopped inside a warehouse that, despite its deteriorated external appearance, had been adapted to serve as a kind of operations center. "Welcome to your maternity suite," Sterling announced with mock cordiality as his men transferred Madison to a makeshift hospital bed. "It's not the Legacy Hotel, but it will serve the purpose." "Why all this trouble?" Archer questioned, being forced to sit in a chair next to the bed. "The documents are already with the FBI. It's a matter of time before—" "Until what?" Sterling interrupted, approaching with a calculating smile. "Until they discovered that the great Archer Blackwood was in on the scheme from the beginning?" Madison watched the confusion cross Archer's face. "What are you talking about?" "Your father was smarter than we knew," Sterling explained, pulling an envelope out of his jacket. "He didn't just document our operations. He created a contingency plan. Wire transfers, contracts, everything perfectly forged to make it look like you were the mastermind of the entire scheme from the beginning." "Impossible," Archer protested, but Madison noticed a flicker of doubt in his eyes. "My father never—" "Your father was a pragmatic man," Sterling cut in. "He knew that if something went wrong, he would need a scapegoat. Who better than his own son? the ambitious young businessman who turned a family business into an empire through questionable means. A devastating contraction prevented Madison from hearing Archer's response. When the pain subsided, she realized that Dr. Peterson was preparing medical equipment with mechanical efficiency. "It's time," the doctor announced. "I need everyone except the father to leave the room." Sterling hesitated only a moment before gesturing to his men. "Keep your guns trained on him. If he tries anything heroic, his wife and baby will pay the price." Once they were relatively alone except for the armed guards, Archer was able to get closer to Madison. Even with his hands tied, he found a way to hold his fingers. "Resist, love," he murmured. "Help is on the way." Madison wanted to ask how he could be sure, but another contraction stopped her. Between waves of pain, she caught the distant sound of approaching helicopters. "Start pushing now," Dr. Peterson instructed, her professional voice masking the tension of the moment. The next few minutes were a blur of pain, screams, and the increasingly close sound of sirens. Madison focused solely on bringing her daughter into the world, while Archer divided his attention between her and the movements outside the warehouse. "The head is appearing," the doctor announced. "One more effort." Grace's cries echoed through the warehouse just as explosions shook the building. Screams and gunshots filled the air as SWAT teams stormed the premises through multiple entrances. "FBI, everyone on the ground." Sterling tried to reach for his gun, but was knocked down by 2 officers before he could fire. The other men, realizing they were surrounded, quickly surrendered. "Be careful with the mother and baby," Claire's voice sounded above the chaos. She ran into the warehouse, followed by paramedics. "As?" Sterling asked as he was handcuffed, his composure finally broken. "The bracelet," Archer replied, now free from restraints and holding his newborn daughter as paramedics tended to Madison. "A birthday gift with built-in GPS. Never trust a man who lost his wife once." Hours later, in the private room at Massachusetts General Hospital, Madison watched Archer rocking Grace. His daughter was perfect, 10 fingers on her hands, 10 on her toes, and a surprising amount of dark hair like her father's. "The documents that incriminated you were fake," Claire informed him, entering the room. His father left a letter explaining that they were a trap for Sterling. He knew that if anything happened to him, Sterling would try to use that fake evidence. "Richard Blackwood, always one step ahead," Madison murmured sleepily. "Rest," Archer instructed, placing Grace in her crib. "Tomorrow will be a new day, a new beginning for all of us." As Madison fell asleep, Archer remained vigilant, protecting his family's sleep. The empire he built might have been shaken, but the true legacy, love and truth, remained intact. A week after the dramatic events at the warehouse, Madison watched the city of Boston through her hospital room window, her thoughts torn between little Grace sleeping peacefully in her crib and the headlines dominating the news. The fall of the Sterling Empire and the exposure of the human trafficking ring in the hotels had become the biggest corporate scandal of the decade. Federal prosecutors just announced 12 more arrests, Archer reported, entering the room with 2 cups of coffee. His eyes, although tired from long hours of depositions and meetings with lawyers, always softened when they rested on Grace. Executives from 3 different hotel chains were involved. "And Rachel?" Madison asked, accepting the cup he offered. His personal assistant's betrayal still weighed heavily on Archer. "She made a plea bargain. Apparently, Harrison recruited her years ago, when she was still an intern at the company. He used her father's gambling debts as leverage." Madison sighed, thinking about how many other lives had been manipulated and destroyed by the greed of Sterling and his associates. "How is Claire?" "Strong as always," Archer replied, sitting on the edge of the bed. "She's working with a nonprofit to help victims of trafficking. She wants to turn her parents' legacy into something positive." Grace's soft crying interrupted the conversation. Madison started to get up, but Archer was quicker, picking up his daughter with a gentleness that contrasted with his imposing figure. "She has your eyes," he murmured, cradling Grace as he walked across the room. "And apparently so is his temper. The nurse said she had never seen a baby so determined in his opinions." Considering the genes you inherited, it doesn't surprise me, Madison joked, but her expression soon turned serious. Archer, we need to talk about the future. About Blackwood Enterprises. He nodded, knowing this conversation was inevitable. With the scheme exposed, the company's reputation was at stake. The lawyers suggest a complete restructuring, new board, new management, full transparency in operations. And what do you want to do? Archer was silent for a moment, watching his daughter fall asleep again in his arms. I want to rebuild, but not just the company. I want to rebuild everything, our life, our family, our trust. Do things the right way this time. As? Madison asked softly. First, turning hotels into something positive. Claire suggested creating a training and employment program for survivors of human trafficking. Give them a real chance at a fresh start. Madison felt her heart expand with pride and love. This was the man she fell in love with. Not the business mogul, but the man who saw beyond the numbers, who understood the real value of people. What about us? She asked, her voice shaking slightly. Archer gently placed Grace in the crib before turning to Madison. 3 years ago, we lost everything because we kept secrets from each other. We won't make the same mistake again. He withdrew something from his jacket pocket, a small blue velvet that Madison recognized immediately. It was the box that contained her wedding ring, the same one she had left behind that fateful night. Marry me again, Archer proposed, opening the box to reveal not only the old wedding band, but also a new ring. Not for the empire, not for the legacy, but for us. For Grace. For all the mornings I wake up and am grateful to have you back in my life. Madison felt tears run down her face as Archer knelt beside her bed. No more secrets? She asked. No more secrets, he promised. Just truth, trust, and a future we will build together. Yes, Madison replied, allowing him to slide both rings onto her finger. 1,000 times yes. The moment was interrupted by a soft knock on the door. It was Claire, carrying a folder of documents and a small gift wrapped in pink paper. Sorry to interrupt, she smiled as she noticed the rings and tears. But I thought you'd like to know. The judge just approved the conversion of Sterling's seized assets into a trust for the victims. And... She hesitated, her eyes shining. We found something in my father's files that you need to see. Claire opened the folder with almost reverential care, scattering old documents on the hospital room table. Madison, still in bed, and Archer, with Grace asleep in his arms, watched intently as she arranged the pages in chronological order. My father kept a secret diary, Claire explained, her voice shaking slightly. Not just about illegal operations, but about something much more personal. Something that connects our families in ways no one imagined. Madison felt Archer tense beside her as Claire revealed an old photograph. In it, Richard Blackwood and James Reynolds appeared much younger, wearing military uniforms, next to a woman Madison recognized immediately. It was Catherine Reynolds, Claire's mother, but the photo had been taken years before her marriage to James. My mother and father... Claire hesitated, looking at Archer. They were engaged before she met my father. Impossible, Archer muttered, but his eyes never left the photograph. My father never mentioned... Because he promised not to, Claire continued, removing a letter from the envelope. When Catherine chose James, Richard swore he would keep the past buried, but he never stopped worrying about her family. That's why, when he discovered the trafficking scheme, his first concern was protecting the Reynolds. Madison watched as Archer took in the information, her emotions clearly torn between shock and dawning understanding. That's why he documented everything? To protect her family? In part, Claire nodded, revealing more documents. But there was something bigger. Richard discovered that Sterling wasn't acting alone. There was, still is, a much larger organization behind it all. Powerful people, in positions of authority, using hotel chains as a front for their illegal operations. The other hotels that were mentioned in today's arrests, Madison realized, remembering the news. Wasn't it just the Reynolds Corporation? No, Claire confirmed. It's an international network. Sterling was just a pawn in a much bigger game. And she hesitated, glancing nervously at the door before continuing in a quieter voice. Some of the names that appear on these documents are people who are still at large. Very dangerous people. Grace chose that moment to wake up, her small cry breaking the tension of the moment. Archer rocked her gently, but his eyes remained fixed on the documents. "What exactly are you suggesting, Claire?" he asked, his voice taking on the calculating tone that Madison knew well. It was the tone he used when he was strategizing. "I'm suggesting that our parents started something they couldn't finish," Claire replied, determination shining in her eyes. "Blackwood Enterprises and what remains of Reynolds Corporation have resources, connections, and most importantly, legitimacy in the hotel market. With the restructuring you plan, we could continue the investigation from the inside," Archer added, understanding the plan. "Use our position to expose the rest of the organization." Madison felt a shiver of worry run down her spine. But it would be dangerous. These people have already proven what they are capable of. "That's why we need to be smarter," Claire argued. "Richard and my parents worked alone, without support. We have the FBI, we have evidence, and most importantly," she smiled at Grace, "we have so much more to protect." Archer walked to the window, silhouetted against the Boston skyline as he considered the implications. Madison could practically see the gears of her mind working, weighing risks and possibilities. "If we do this," he finally said, turning to face them, "we need to do it right. No secrets between us, no individual actions. We work as a team, we protect each other. And we use the resources we have," Claire agreed. "The rehabilitation program for trafficking victims can be more than just a charitable initiative. It can be our source of inside information." Madison looked at her daughter, now calm in her father's arms, and thought about the future she wanted for her. A future where his family's legacy was not tarnished by crimes and secrets, but rather defined by the courage to stand up to injustice. "When do we start?" she asked, surprising both Archer and Claire with her determination. "Madison," Archer began, concern evident in his voice. "No," she interrupted him gently. "3 years ago I ran away to protect you. Now we will fight together to protect our family, all of it." She smiled at Claire, who smiled back with tears in her eyes. A soft knock on the door announced the arrival of the nurse for routine exams. Claire quickly put away the documents, leaving only the gift wrapped in pink paper on the table. "Open it when you're alone," she whispered before leaving. "It's something my mom saved for a special moment." As the nurse checked her vitals, Madison exchanged a meaningful look with Archer. They had overcome separation, betrayal, and danger to be together again. Now, with their daughter in their arms and a new purpose before them, they were ready to write the next chapter of their story, not just for themselves, but for all the lives they could save in the process. The gift wrapped in pink paper remained untouched on the hospital room table for several hours after Claire's departure. Madison and Archer were engrossed in a series of conference calls with Blackwood Enterprises' legal team, outlining the next steps in restructuring the company. Only when night fell over Boston and Grace finally fell asleep in her crib did they find a moment to examine the mysterious package. "Do you think we should wait, Claire?" Madison asked, her fingers playing with the delicate ribbon that wrapped the gift. "She said to open it when we were alone," Archer replied, sitting on the edge of the bed. His green eyes reflected the same curiosity that Madison felt. Carefully, she undid the bow and removed the paper, revealing an antique carved wooden music box. At the top, delicate roses had been carved by hand, their petals weathered but still beautiful. "Wait," Archer said suddenly, leaning down to examine the base of the box. "There's something engraved here. To Catherine, may your heart always find its true song. Love, Richard." Madison felt her breath hitch. Was it a gift from your father to Claire's mother? It must have been before she chose James, Archer murmured, gently turning the golden key on the side of the box. A gentle melody filled the room, the notes of Moon River dancing in the air like memories of a long-lost love. But it wasn't the music that made Madison gasp. Inside the carefully preserved box were letters, photographs, and a small diary bound in red leather. It's her memories, Madison realized, gently removing one of the letters. Catherine has kept all of this all these years. Archer picked up one of the photographs. In it, her father and Catherine sat on a park bench, young and smiling, the World Trade Center still majestic in the background. New York, 1975, he read the note on the back. Dear Claire, Madison began reading a note attached to the lid of the box. If you're reading this, it means it's finally time for the truth to come to light. The stories in these pages aren't just about lost love. They're about choices, sacrifices, and the price we pay to protect those we love. Richard wasn't just my first love. He became my silent guardian, even after I chose a different path. What we discovered about Sterling and his associates is just the tip of the iceberg. Use this information wisely. Love. Mom. Grace stirred in her sleep, as if feeling the weight of the revelations filling the room. Archer walked over to the crib, gently adjusting the blanket over his daughter before turning his attention back to his journal. There are codes here, he noted, leafing through the yellowed pages. Names, dates, locations. Catherine wasn't just documenting personal memories. She was mapping Sterling's network. Madison examined a series of numbers written on the back cover of the diary. These look like coordinates, and there's a password, too. Moonlight Serenade. The song that played the first time we danced together, Archer murmured, a sad smile playing on his lips. My dad used to say it was his favorite song, because it reminded him of her, Madison added softly. A sudden ringing on their phones interrupted the moment. It was an urgent message from Claire. I just received an anonymous call. Someone is leaking information about the investigation. Don't trust anyone outside of our immediate circle. Archer immediately began photographing each page of the diary with his encrypted phone. We need to digitize all of this before... A knock on the door interrupted him. Dr. Nathan Cooper entered, looking worried. Sorry about the timing, but we need to move Mrs. Blackwood and the baby to another room. Hospital security protocol. Madison and Archer exchanged alert glances. There were no security protocols scheduled for that night. Of course, Doctor, Archer replied softly, his posture casual but his muscles tense. Can you give us a few minutes to organize our belongings? As soon as the doctor left, Archer activated the panic button on his watch, a silent signal to the security team stationed at the hospital. That's not Dr. Cooper, he whispered, quickly putting the diary and letters back into his briefcase. How do you know? Madison asked, already picking up Grace with calculated movements so as not to wake her. Cooper is colorblind. The man who just left checked the colors on the monitors without hesitation. The muffled sound of footsteps in the hallway confirmed his suspicions. Whoever was behind Sterling's network had already found out about Catherine's diary. The hunt was just beginning, and now they had much more to lose than just secrets from the past. The hospital room turned into an arena of silent, precise movements. Madison, with Grace cradled against her chest, watched Archer check the window while typing a quick message on his phone. The fake Dr. Cooper and his associates were still in the hallway, their shadows visible through the frosted glass of the door. The security team is 2 minutes away, Archer whispered, putting away his phone. But we need to buy time. As if responding to an invisible signal, Grace began to cry, a high-pitched sound echoing through the room. Madison immediately recognized the opportunity. Doctor, she called, her voice thick with purposeful concern. I think there's something wrong with the baby. The door quickly opened, revealing the imposter and 2 men dressed as nurses. His eyes swept the room, lingering on the folder where Archer had stored Catherine's diary. The child needs to be examined, the fake doctor declared, approaching with a syringe hidden in his sleeve. Archer intercepted his movement, placing himself between the man and his family. Of course, after we check your credentials. Hospital protocol, you understand. The imposter's professional smile faltered. In one fluid movement, he drew the syringe, but Archer was already ready. Years of self-defense classes after Madison's disappearance proved their worth when he dodged the attack, using the attacker's own momentum to knock him down. The other two men advanced, but were surprised by the sound of breaking glass. Through the window, an FBI tactical team made their dramatic entrance, guns drawn and orders shouted. FBI, everyone on the ground! The action lasted less than a minute. When the dust settled, the three imposters were handcuffed and being led away, while forensic officers began to process the scene. Are you guys okay? Claire burst into the room, followed by a Royal Medical team. I received the alert from Archer and activated the tactical unit that was monitoring the hospital. Madison handed Grace over to the pediatrician for a complete checkup, her hands still shaking slightly. The diary. They knew about it. Not only did they know, Archer commented, retrieving his briefcase. They came prepared for a silent extraction. The syringe probably contained some kind of sedative. Claire examined the contents of a folder she was carrying. We have already identified one of the men, Martin Walsh, a former CIA agent with connections to a private security company that provides services to several international hotel chains. The same company that provided security for the hotels involved in the trafficking scheme? Madison asked, even though she already knew the answer. Exactly, Claire confirmed. And there's more. The anonymous call I received? It was from someone within Walsh's company. Apparently not everyone agrees with the organization's operations. Archer absorbed the information as he watched the pediatrician examine Grace. Her daughter, oblivious to the chaos that surrounded her, was more interested in grabbing the doctor's stethoscope. We need to get you out of here, he decided, turning to Madison. The hospital is no longer safe. Neither does the house on Martha's Vineyard, Claire added. They've already proven they can meet us there. I have a place, Madison surprised everyone. On the coast of Maine. I bought it under a false name when I ran away. No one but me knows about it. Archer looked at her, a mixture of surprise and understanding in his eyes. Even in her escape, Madison had prepared for every possibility. It's perfect, Claire agreed. I can coordinate the investigation from there while keeping you safe. The next 30 minutes were a whirlwind of controlled activity. While the FBI team processed the suspects, a discreet caravan was organized to transport Madison, Grace, and the documents to the refuge in Maine. I found something interesting on Walsh's phone, Claire commented as she helped Madison pack the essentials. Coordinates for a warehouse in Providence. Coincidentally, they are the same coordinates that appear in my mother's diary. Catherine knew, Madison realized. She mapped out the entire operation before Sterling ordered her and my father's accident, Claire added, her voice firm despite the obvious pain. Archer, who was overseeing the final security preparations, joined them. The deposit can wait. Right now our priority is keeping you safe while we process what we already have. Madison knew he was right, but something in Claire's eyes suggested that the Providence warehouse held more than just documents. Perhaps, just as the music box had revealed secrets from the past, this place could provide the final answers everyone was looking for. As night progressed over Boston, a discreet motorcade left the hospital, transporting not only a family seeking safety, but also the secrets that could dismantle one of the largest criminal operations on the American East Coast. The legacy of Catherine Reynolds and Richard Blackwood lived on through their children, and the truth, like an inexorable tide, was about to surface. The house in Maine was exactly as Madison had left it 3 years ago, a rustic 2-story cabin hidden among centuries-old pines overlooking the Atlantic Ocean. The salty air and the sound of waves crashing against the rocks created a false sense of peace that contrasted with the palpable tension among the occupants. Security systems have been updated, Archer reported, checking the monitors installed in the makeshift office. Thermal cameras, motion sensors, and a tactical team discreetly positioned around the perimeter. Madison rocked Grace gently in her arms, watching Claire organize her mother's diary documents on the dining table. The coordinates of the Providence warehouse had been cross-referenced with other information, revealing an unsettling pattern. Each coordinate corresponds to a property registered under different shell companies, Claire explained, marking points on a digital map, all connected to Walsh's security company. And all strategically located near hotels involved in the trafficking scheme, Archer added, moving closer to examine the map. Your mother wasn't just mapping out the operations. She was building a complete case. A soft alert on the security monitors caught everyone's attention. A delivery van was approaching along the dirt road that led to the property. Are we expecting someone? Madison asked, instinctively protecting Grace. It's Rachel, Archer replied, recognizing the identification string in the system. She has information about Sterling's latest financial movements. Minutes later, Rachel Chen entered the house, carrying a briefcase and looking significantly haggard since the last time Madison had seen her. The plea bargain and the weight of guilt had left visible marks on his face. I found something in the offshore accounts, Rachel began without preamble, scattering documents on the table. Sterling was making regular payments to an account in the Cayman Islands. The beneficiary is a company called Moonlight Enterprises. Same name as the song, Madison muttered, exchanging a meaningful look with Archer. Catherine used the name of the song that connected her to Richard as a clue, Claire realized, quickly typing the company name into her laptop. Moonlight Enterprises owns the warehouse in Providence. It's no coincidence, Archer declared, studying the financial documents. Payments began exactly 1 week after the accident that killed his parents. Grace began to cry, as if she sensed the growing tension in the room. Madison took her upstairs to her bedroom, taking the moment to reorganize her thoughts. Through the window, she watched the sun set over the ocean, painting the sky in shades of red that resembled blood. She is fine? Archer's voice surprised her. He stood in the doorway, his expression softening as he watched his daughter finally fall asleep. Just tired, Madison replied, gently placing Grace in her crib. Like the rest of us. Madison, Archer began, his voice low and intense. What we find in that warehouse could change everything, not just for us, but for hundreds of trafficking victims. I know, she replied, turning to face him. That's why I need to go to Providence. Absolutely not, Archer protested immediately. It's very dangerous. I'm the only one who can get in without raising suspicion, Madison argued. Rachel discovered that the company maintains a list of authorized cleaning staff. My fake name is still in the system from when I worked at Legacy. Before Archer could respond, Claire appeared in the doorway, her laptop in hand. You guys need to see this. I just got an anonymous email with security camera footage from the warehouse. There's something big going on there tomorrow night. The images showed intense movement of trucks and armed men. In one of them, a familiar face appeared giving orders. Marcus Sterling, brother of Paul Sterling, who everyone believed was in Europe. They're clearing the place, Archer concluded, his strategic mind already processing the implications. After the arrests, they are eliminating evidence. Then we need to act now, Madison insisted, before everything Catherine documented is destroyed. The silence that followed was broken only by Grace's soft breathing. Archer studied his wife's determined face, recognizing the same strength that had driven her to run away to protect him 3 years ago. If we do this, he finally said, we do it my way, with complete planning and backup at every step. Madison nodded, knowing this might be her only chance to finally end the legacy of secrets that had shaped their lives. As night fell over Maine, the four began planning an operation that could finally expose the truth, or cost them everything they had fought to win back. The plan was simple in theory, but dangerously complex in execution. Madison adjusted her janitorial uniform as she watched the Providence warehouse through the tinted glass of the surveillance van. The sun was beginning to set, casting long shadows over the industrial complex that hid much more than just goods. Security systems confirmed. Claire's voice sounded through the discreet communicator in her ear. You have a 15-minute window between rounds. Rachel managed to disable the cameras in the east sector. And Marcus Sterling? Madison asked, checking the fake badge attached to her uniform once again. Still in meeting downtown, Archer replied, his voice tense even through the communicator. The FBI team is monitoring his every move. Madison instinctively touched the pendant around her neck, a gift from Archer that doubled as a tracking and recording device. He thought about Grace, safe in her Maine home under the protection of federal agents, and how every step of this plan could finally guarantee a threat-free future for her daughter. Remember, Claire continued, we looked for anything related to Moonlight Enterprises or my mother's diary coordinates. Vaults, files, servers. Got it. Madison took a deep breath, adjusting the cleaning supplies bag that hid data collection equipment. Let's do this. Accessing the warehouse was surprisingly easy. Her fake name was actually still in the system, and the guard just waved absently as she passed by. The real challenge began when Madison reached the main hallway, where security cameras monitored her every move. Third door on the right, Claire led. The administrative office should be empty by now. Madison found the door locked, but the skills she developed during her years working in hotels proved their worth. Within seconds, he was inside the dark office, connecting an FBI-supplied device to the main computer. Download started, she whispered, nervously watching the progress bar. Madison. Archer's voice took on an urgent tone. We have movement. Marcus Sterling left the meeting early. How long? She asked, her eyes switching between the computer screen and the door. 20 minutes, maybe less. Madison, abort the mission. It's not worth the risk. But something caught his eye. A folder marked with the Moonlight Enterprises symbol partially visible on a high shelf. Ignoring Archer's protest, Madison reached for the folder, her heart racing as she recognized the familiar handwriting in the marginal notes. These are Catherine's documents, she informed him, quickly photographing each page with the special device on her phone. Records of all the victims, dates, locations. She documented everything. Madison. Sterling just entered the compound, Claire warned, her voice thick with concern. The download on the computer reached 100%, just as voices began to echo through the hallway. Madison disconnected the device and replaced the folder, but as she turned to leave, she found her path blocked. Marcus Sterling stood in the doorway, his cold smile illuminated by the hallway light. Well, well. What do we have here? Just routine cleaning, Madison replied calmly, even though her heart hammered against her chest. Sure. Sterling stepped forward, his eyes fixed on the pendant around her neck. Interesting choice of jewelry for a cleaning lady. Through the communicator, Madison could hear Archer mobilizing rescue teams, but she knew she would need to buy time. It was a gift, she replied, slowly backing away toward the window. Your brother Paul mentioned you, before he confessed everything to the FBI. The mention of his brother made Sterling hesitate, his expression hardening. Paul was always weak. He didn't understand that sometimes it is necessary to sacrifice a few to benefit the many. Sacrifice? Madison felt her own anger rise. Is that what you call destroying innocent lives? Catherine Reynolds tried to expose you, and you killed her for it. Catherine was an idealistic fool, just like you. Sterling pulled out a gun, but Madison was already prepared. With a quick movement, she activated the pepper spray disguised as cleaning product, hitting Sterling directly in the eyes. The man staggered back, firing blindly as Madison threw herself through the window, rolling onto the outside maintenance platform. The sound of sirens filled the air as FBI teams emerged from all directions, surrounding the building. Madison ran across the platform, aware of the shots ricocheting off the metal around her. On your left, Archer's voice guided. Fire escape. Madison reached the stairs just as an explosion rocked the building. Sterling had apparently triggered some sort of self-destruct system, but it was too late. The evidence had already been collected, and the confessions recorded through the pendant would be more than enough to put an end to the organization. Archer was waiting for her on the ground, wrapping her in his arms once she landed safely. Together, they watched as Sterling was taken into custody, while special teams ensured the preservation of any remaining evidence in the burning building. "He finished?" Madison asked, still shaking slightly in her husband's arms. "Almost," Claire replied, approaching with her laptop. "The files you recovered are exactly what we needed. The entire network is exposed now." Hours later, back at home in Maine, Madison rocked Grace as she watched the news cover the simultaneous arrests happening up and down the East Coast. The legacy of lies and crimes that had haunted two families for decades was finally coming to an end, replaced by a new legacy, one of truth, justice, and redemption. "What are you thinking about?" Archer asked, sitting down next to you with 2 cups of tea. "How proud our parents would be," Claire answered for her, showing one last photograph found in the archives. Richard Blackwood and Catherine Reynolds, young and smiling, holding the same music box that had started this entire journey. Madison looked at her sleeping daughter and smiled. Grace would grow up knowing the true story of her family, not just the painful parts, but also the courage, love, and determination that had finally brought light to the darkness. To Grace. Archer raised his cup in a silent toast. "For the truth," Claire added. "For the future," Madison added, knowing that finally they could all sleep in peace, protected not by secrets, but by the strength of the love and truth they had fought so hard to reveal.